Rise of the Ronin, I think is a great game. And I think that everyone out there should at least give it a try if they like open world games. And I don't think it's like every other Ubisoft game. I don't think it's like every, drab and boring open world game. I think the gameplay is so unique, and I think the open world is fun to explore. And I know that's not necessarily the most popular opinion. I know everyone likes the gameplay, but most people probably don't love the open world. They think it's maybe boring. I heavily disagree with that. And I wanted to kind of analyze why, user scores are as low as they are. I know a lot of people are giving this a 4 and lower than that. So I wanted to analyze those negative comments and give you guys my thoughts on it. So let's get right into it. I have Metacritic user scores pulled up here, and I kind of just want to scroll through and read them to you guys and tell you guys what I think. So first guy, Spice Ice 92, Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima Platinum here. The game is very, very average game. Aside from bad graphics, the story is very generic and uninteresting. Having to comply with the modern gamer standards, they were too afraid to create a male character with fully developed personality and voice acting. They went with the customizable silent one, which takes away a lot of the immersion. Combat is the only good aspect. I also have to stress how bad the graphics are. I felt like I was playing on a Nintendo Switch. I don't recommend it at all. If you are on the fence, wait for Stellar Blade. According to the demo, that game looks more promising. Okay, so a couple of things to touch on here. He starts off with saying that he's a Ghost of Tsushima Platinum. Here's a really unpopular opinion from the get-go. I think Ghost of Tsushima is a phenomenal game. I platinumed it, but I think it's like a lot of Ubisoft games, right? It's a lot of outposts. It's a lot of, visiting temples or shrines or whatever they called it. And they have their own kind of touch on it, like you have to follow the fox or, follow the way the wind is blowing. But at the end of the day, if you're platinuming the game, if you're 50 hours in, you start to realize it can be pretty repetitive regardless. And this comes from somebody who loves the game. I loved Ghost of Tsushima, but I also love Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Another unpopular opinion, I also love Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I also loved Assassin's Creed Origins. All three of the newer Assassin's Creed games I loved. Okay, so open worlds with some repetitiveness isn't the biggest deal to me. I get like a satisfaction in my lizard brain when I kind of have to, do a checklist of things in an open world map. That's okay with me. If the gameplay is good and the graphics are relatively intriguing, I'm okay with that. Ghost of Tsushima, phenomenal graphics, okay? So if you want to platinum just for graphics alone, I would say Ghost of Tsushima is probably the route to go. I get that this game does not have the best graphics. To say that this looks like a Nintendo Switch game is just false. There are open world areas with the way the light is shining on the grass and the way you're making your way through I don't know if they're called just cherry blossoms or sakura trees or what, but it looks beautiful. The game can be really stunning, right? And there's moments where the game maybe falters. In the bigger cities, it can look a little drab and almost gray or have like this brownish tint that isn't super appealing. But that's an art style choice, right? These developers aren't necessarily going for a Ghost of Tsushima look. Let them do their own thing. So I heavily disagree with the bad graphics. And he says having to comply with the modern gamer standards. If anything, I feel like in terms of gameplay and open world mechanics, this isn't very modern gamer. A lot of modern games like Elden Ring, Breath of the Wild, don't give you as many map markers, or in fact any map markers. I think it's okay to have map markers when you're just kind of wanting to relax after, a long, hard day's work or whatever. You want to sit on the couch and just kind of do a checklist of items, have some good gameplay. I think it's a good game, and I think even if it is like the Assassin's Creed games, even if it is a little Ubisoft-y, I think that's fine, right? And this guy says they were too afraid to create a male character with fully developed personality and voice acting. I don't think that that's true. And there is voice acting for the main character, but it's not as much as I would have liked, right? But I think this is another artistic choice. They wanted to create a protagonist which, you can immerse yourself and put yourself in those shoes kind of protagonist where you don't talk much. I like voice acting, so I think I would have been okay with the Fallout 4 kind of situation where you create the protagonist, but then, the protagonist still has voice acting and stuff. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad decision to go with the customizable silent protagonist, but I think that's just going to be a preference thing. I care more about gameplay over anything else, and I frankly could care less about story, generally speaking. But I think that might have some validity to it, depending on what kind of person you are and what kind of gameplay style you want. Combat is the only good aspect, this guy says. Again, untrue. I think this game looks good enough. I don't think you can expect every game that comes out to look like, Last of Us Part 2 or Red Dead Redemption 2. Some games, I just want to hop on, have a good time after a long day, relax, do some side quests, do some collectible collecting, and just have a good time, right? And I don't think the combat's the only good aspect. There's so many mini games in this game. You can do the glider challenges, you could do the sharpshooter ranges, and I have a good time with all of those. And I had a great time kind of going through the map and petting all the cats and petting the dogs and all of that. And this guy really wants to stress on how bad the graphics are. This doesn't look like a Nintendo Switch game. I think in terms of how much they're rendering in, I don't think a Nintendo Switch could frankly run this. It chugs a little bit on the PS5 even, which it shouldn't. It shouldn't chug on the PS5 based on how it looks. I don't think it looks good enough to chug on the PS5, to make that very clear. But I think it does look good enough to enjoy. Yeah, this guy doesn't recommend it at all. If you're on the fence, wait for Stellar. I think Stellar Blade's going to be a good game, but I think they're very different games. I mean, sure, they both have some parry mechanics, have some Souls-like elements, but this is an open-world, exploration-heavy, non-linear game, and I think if you can enjoy both. So let's move on. I'm taking forever on one comment. This is going to take forever. I'll try and speed through the rest of these. So if I don't live up to the hype of Ghost of Tsushima, but the map style is okay, fighting, I like that. Okay, that's not a bad review, but a 4 for an average review? I think 4 is like below average, is it not? If he likes the fighting and the map style is okay, then shouldn't it go more on like towards the 6? Or even a 5 would have been fine. 4, it hits me wrong because this really affects the developers, right? Like when you enjoy a game and you still give it a 4, these scores are gonna kind of affect the games they develop in the future. I really hate that. Dumb AI, true. So this guy says dumb AI and strange parry restore frame counts. Both of those I kind of agree with, and here's why. AI is stupid and stealth. You can be in their peripheral vision and they will never see you. Very stupid AI, I agree. In terms of strange parry restore frames count, this is true because whenever you're about to have an enemy do a red flash attack on you, there's a couple of frames between when the flash occurs and when you have to press the button to parry. This range of frames varies, which can make it difficult to, get used to that parry mechanic in general. What I will say is it depends on the enemy, and enemies stay consistent from enemy to enemy. So if you're fighting the same kind of enemy, the amount of time between those frames from when the red light flashes to when you have to actually hit the button, that will stay consistent from enemy to enemy. So parry restore frames counts are strange. I can agree with that, but having put so many hours into the game, I actually kind of at this point just know how every enemy's like, how I should time it. If you want to kind of be consistent, always try and time it to when the attack is about to land, not when the red flash goes off. Okay, that's my tip to you if you want to just kind of stay consistent throughout. This guy says 10-year-old graphics. Come on, man. The game does not look... It doesn't look 10 years. It doesn't look like a PS3 era game. 10 years ago, was that PS4? Maybe some better looking PS3 games, but I really still don't think it looks like it has 10-year-old graphics. The cloth physics and stuff look really cool when you and your character is super customizable. So when you're on your horse, gliding through the wind, using your glider or anything, but it looks good to me. It doesn't look as bad as people are saying. I don't get it. Ubisoft like half-empty, deadly boring open world. That's not true. The world is littered with stuff to do. You just have to be okay with the icon being there. I don't get that either. I skipped almost every side mission dialogue. Decent, challenging boss fights are the only thing that brings me to the credits. The game isn't worthy enough to be a PlayStation exclusive. Boss fights, frankly, aren't that hard. If you're into Soulsborne games and you're looking for purely difficulty, I think you'll find more difficulty elsewhere. I found the game to be relatively easy so far. So, and I'm not the best gamer in the world. It's not like I'm a god at Souls-like games or anything. And if I'm saying that the game's relatively easy, it's pretty easy, guys. Yeah, but some of this guy's statements are true. The AI is really silly. It doesn't make sense at times. So, you know, I'll give him the 4. Yeah, if that's his opinion on it. If the AI really brought it down that much for him and the strange parry frame counts, then fine. All right, so this guy says, while I enjoyed the gameplay, story, and general atmosphere, the graphics are clearly substandard for PS5, and it suffers the comparison with the PS5 version of Ghost of Tsushima. I think it suffers with the PS4 version of Ghost of Tsushima. I think the Ghost of Tsushima PS4 version looks better, but graphics aren't everything. Right, moving on. I've already talked about that. Being a gamer, best part of 30 years, I never signed up to a review website to give a review, but this game felt I needed it. I needed to review it. Where are all these high reviews coming from? I don't know. Must be paid reviews. The game I played was bland as Jacob's Cracker. Okay. I don't know what that means. The story is just awful. Go to the dojo, be asked to help, kill 10 shinobis, fight a boss. Yeah, I think this guy, I disagree with him, but it's not like something like I can say, okay, he's purely just objectively incorrect. If he doesn't like the core gameplay loop, he's not going to like the game. All right, here's where we get to the really good stuff. The 3s. The least interesting open world game I think I've ever played. Combat is fun, but there's nothing to keep me interested. The least interesting open world game this guy's ever played? Bro, what? He maybe just doesn't play that many open world games, but I have definitely played open world games that are significantly less interesting. But I play everything that comes out, so that might be a me thing, but the least interesting open world game he's ever played. That's... I don't know, man. Especially once you get to the second region, Edo, the game is... It's pretty freaking interesting. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but it's pretty. Team Ninja's Rise of the Ronin was promoted as their most ambitious project yet, but it needs modern gaming standards. Game's graphics, gameplay mechanics, and performance issues feel outdated, reminiscent of older consoles like PS4 or PS3. Despite being set in Japan's Bakumatsu period, the game's execution must live up to its historical backdrop, with immersion frequently broken by incongruous animations and lackluster storytelling. Although it tries to follow the footsteps of successful titles like Ghost of Tsushima, Rise of the Ronin's derivative nature and repetitive open-world tasks only highlight its flaws. While the game's combat mechanics and character depth show promise, they are overshadowed by a subpar overall experience. Rise of the Ronin feels like a missed opportunity for Team Ninja and a disappointment for PlayStation gamers looking for innovation and polish. Not every game is going to be Elden Ring. Not every game is going to be generation defining. And this is what, you know, I really kind of get bothered by, is when developers put their foot out into a new realm and try something, you know, that's new to the team. I don't think we can necessarily expect every developer to come out shining and build something like Elden Ring. Sometimes developers, like, to me, this might be a really ambitious project for these developers. Nioh 2 was a great game, but it wasn't open world. Wolong, great game, not open world, right? They've built really great games, but they haven't built something open world with a deep political system as like the lore in the backdrop. As this has been their most ambitious game. It makes sense. Sure, they might not be able to push the graphics as much as Ghost of Tsushima did. That's fine. I remember when Elden Ring's like gameplay leaked the very first time, people were giving it so much crap for having really disgusting looking assets. Like the rendering was just poorly done or something like that. People always have something to complain about when it comes to graphics. I don't think this game is, first of all, a disappointment. And second of all, I don't think it needed to necessarily innovate in the way that people expected it to. This guy gave it a 3 because I think it's ridiculous that this guy says it looks like a PS3 game, first of all, but I'm not going to go back into the graphics. I've talked about that enough. Incongruous animations. The animations are so cool. The animations are awesome. There's nothing wrong with the animations. The way you can kind of kill the enemies after you break down their key gauge and they're out of stamina, and you can hold triangle to do like this really rad animation and just absolutely demolish them. And the gore that it shows, it's so cool. You feel really powerful, especially later on in the game when you unlock certain skills. The animations are sick. Although it tries to follow in the footsteps of successful titles like Ghost of Tsushima. I think a lot of people compare this because they're kind of in the same area with maybe a similar time period. But I don't think they're necessarily comparable games. They both have their own art style, and the combat is completely different. This is just frustrating to see because they probably put so much effort, into this game, and they created, to me, what seems like a really good game. And people are giving it a 3 because it doesn't look like it's a PS5 game. It's a little ridiculous, right? Okay, this guy said the open world feels empty, and what are these graphics from the PlayStation 3 era? Some of these people I feel like just feed off of other comments. Like they read 3 other comments that say it looks like a PS3 game, and they're gonna leave their own comment saying the same. Okay, this guy says, this guy gave it a 2. Rough open world, boring tasks, rotten extreme picture and optimization. Such garbage picture can only provide a 1080p performance mode, but dare to sell $70 price. Both content and optimization of the game are completely sorry for the game pricing. Such a game to pull down the face of such expensive prices that is a piece of blank. Here's my opinion on video game pricing, okay? And this might be where I kind of piss off some of you guys. $70, I get that it's an egregious price point. I think the reason they put a $70 price point is because they spent a lot of years developing it, and from their perspective, this was a really difficult game to develop. In conjunction with how much I think they thought they would sell, I don't know what their sales numbers are, they believed that $70 was an appropriate price point. They believed that they spent AAA money to develop it, so it justifies a AAA price point to sell it. I think that's okay because gaming as a whole is a hobby, and it's an expensive hobby, right? It's not cheap to buy a $500, $600 console, and it's not cheap to spend $70 on a new game every time a new game releases. But at the end of the day, it's an expensive hobby, right? Like if you're really into cooking steaks, you can choose to buy an expensive grill, and you can choose to buy expensive steaks. You don't do it every day. But if it's a hobby of yours to cook those steaks, you do it because it's a hobby, and you spend the money because it's a hobby. $70, while it's egregious, people spent, I'm sure, right? Like a lot of people, I'm sure, spent $70, and a lot of people found it justified. The amount of time I spend in a game is also really important to me, and for $70, I'm getting well worth my money, considering I'm platinuming this game. I get that not everyone will do that, but if this is the right type of game for you, $70 isn't that egregious a price point. And leave in the comments below if you disagree with me, because I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I thought that was really important to just kind of get my thoughts on the price point out there, because I'm sure I'll see more opinions on that. Okay, this is in French, and I don't know French, so I'm not going to read that. Okay, unfortunately, game's visuals are poor, especially for an 80, is that euro or pound? AAA PS5 exclusive, repetitive game, useless OW, no RP, very poor writing, all quests have the same design. The only interesting thing is to fight, is I'm sure what they meant. No dialogue, Why is it not simple Souls-like? This guy, I think, needs to work on his grammar. There was no period there. It's a run-on sentence. I'm just kidding. Except combat, all other aspects of the game are cursed. Yeah, I mean, again, I disagree. A 2, see, the 4s I maybe understood because that's just not their style of game, but a 2, like 2 just objectively doesn't make sense to me when you're talking about like level design, quest design. You've never played another game in your life then, right? Because like if you give this game a 2 for level design, that means like there's got to be like, you must give Dark Souls games like a 4 or a 5, right? Like, am I going crazy here? 2 is so low. Rise of the Ronin is to Nioh as Sekiro was to Dark Souls, except where Sekiro succeeded, Ronin's execution is clunky trash. Rise of the Ronin is to Nioh as Sekiro was to Dark Souls. Sekiro was a really good game. Dark Souls was a really good game. Rise of the Ronin and Nioh are also both very good games. Except where Sekiro succeeded, Ronin's execution is clunky trash. Then Rise of the Ronin isn't to Nioh as Sekiro is to Dark Souls. This guy, I don't think, understands how to compare things. It's a flawed clone in every way. Dodging is completely borked as they want to force you to use counter spark like Sekiro, which would be fine if it actually worked. Depending on the enemy, you will get a 0-second warning. This, again, goes back to like that red flash thing I was talking about. Spending hours trying to memorize the patterns isn't fun with the system that isn't tight enough to pull it off. I tolerated the twin fight, then turned it off and won't be going back. In this age of gaming, I don't want to swallow moldy food just because I paid for it. There's too many other games that demand my attention. I feel this game only appeals to a very niche set of players who enjoy proving themselves. Poor execution, poor graphics, poor story. I disagree about the gameplay. I think it does take a minute for you to get used to how the game works. I don't think it's 100% like Sekiro's parry timing. Sekiro is a little bit more, I don't want to say forgiving, but I think it is a little bit more forgiving. I think Sekiro as a whole is a harder game, significantly. But the parry timings, I think, are a little bit more forgiving. You can mash the parry button a little bit more. In Rise of the Ronin, the parry button is the same button that's mapped to an attack, a strong attack. So if you mistime the parry button, your character will do a strong attack and then be left exposed to be hit by the enemy. So it took me maybe around 13 or 12 hours to kind of get an understanding of how the parry timing worked. But once I got a grasp for it, I mean, I'm 40, 50 hours in now and I'm loving every minute of it, right? So I think it's worth the 12, 13 hours. Might sound like a lot, guys, but for this game, that's not deep into the game at all. Yeah, so again, disagree. I can't understand Spanish, so I'm going to skip that. Boring open world, all the gameplay is just eliminating enemies' camps. Besides, these camps are repeating and lack design. I get that, but that's not all of the gameplay. That means this guy just didn't do all of the gameplay, right? Like, this guy didn't go around petting the cats. This guy didn't go around doing the glider challenges or the sharpshooter challenges or anything like that. So I disagree with that. Can't understand Spanish, so I'm going to skip that. I'm going to skip this because it contains spoilers. I'm not going to spoil anything. Lack of open world co-op and the fact that each player has to beat a mission in order to play together is a huge letdown. The game was advertised as a co-op game, but it really falls short. Was it advertised as a co-op game? I don't think it was. I love single player games, and I think it's doing the game a disservice if you give it a 1 and it's not a co-op game, but you're looking for a co-op game. Just go play a co-op game then, right? Like, go play Division 2. Go play, what's the new Souls-like that came out that was co-op? Lords of the Fallen. Go play something like that. Rise of the Ronin is a disappointing mess. Outdated Again with the graphics, guys. It doesn't have that many graphics. On the PS5, I encountered 0 bugs. I did encounter a lot of frame rate drops in the cities, but in terms of bugs, none. And that, I know this can vary person to person, but I haven't had any bugs. Combat was messy. That's just objectively untrue. This combat is very polished. And I think it's apparent when a lot of the negative reviews say that the best part about the game is combat. So I really hate it when I see the 1 or 2 reviews that say the combat's bad, because the combat is objectively really good. The character graphics and animations were static and out of kilter. The dialogue was outdated and there was a lot of popping. Okay, so facial animations do suck, and that's okay for me. I don't care that much. Like, for example, you'll see just the lips moving and the eyes and the forehead, and the rest of the face will seem kind of stagnant. That's not super enjoyable to watch, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. If we were in 2006, I would have loved this game, really. 2006? This game can't exist in 2006, dude. 2024, PS4 and PS5, and I've played Ghost of Tsushima, which is a slap in the face in almost every aspect. That's ridiculous that he's saying this is a 2006 looking game. Stupid AI disappointed me. Fair. The graphics were terrible and characters were not interesting. By the way, the AI is only stupid if you're utilizing a lot of stealth. Which is fair, but at 0, I don't think is a justified score for bad AI, because that's a very, it's a very small aspect of the game. Enemies are too strong and hard even when difficulty... Okay, get good. Gameplay... Oh, that's not English. The battle system and gameplay is fantastic. That on its own, that sentence on its own, even if he says... Wait, the entire review is good. Battle system, gameplay is fantastic. Game respects my time. Can't stop playing. Graphics should be better, but not that important. And there are no microtransactions to affect gameplay. I think this guy accidentally gave it a 0, to be honest, because I can't see a situation in which you give it that low of a score, unless this is sarcasm. But I think that's just a mistake. Overall, a boring game, a weird mix of Neo and Assassin's Creed. I think it's the perfect mix of Neo and Assassin's Creed. So just flip this sentence upside down. That's what I think. Very bland open world. Poor outing for Team Ninja. Very sad to see more and more games are released in such a hurry without taking into account the quality. The graphics are I don't know what word that is. The open world is empty and the animations and people's faces leave much to be desired. Do not recommend this game. Wait for the price to drop. Hate the player movement. Graphics are subpar. You've been warned. Great game. Buy once on sale for free on PS Plus. If you think it's a great game to buy once it's on sale and once it's free on PS Plus, don't give it a 0. Give it a 4. Give it a 3. A 0 is so egregious. Good God. Rise of the Ronin isn't just a disappointment. It's a masterclass in mediocrity. Audacious $70 for PS3 era graphics. Yeah, the horse physics do look hilarious. Tragic waste of potential. Turning what could have been thrilling rides turns into awkward, glitch-filled escapades. Any fleeting moments of fun are quickly smothered by the realization you're essentially paying premium prices for an experience that feels like a bargain bin reject. That's so dumb. Oh, that's pissing me off. Guys, that's not true. The game isn't just a step back for gaming, it's a leap into a pit of disappointment where the only thing more shocking than the lack of quality is the audacity to charge full price for it. A 0? See, I feel really bad because I think of, the guy who spent 300, 400 hours of his career helping design the combat system and, helping make this game come to fruition, who goes and reads this review and sees that it's a 0. It's just ridiculous. In a world where players' time and money are valuable, it serves as a cautionary tale. Not all that glitters is gold, and sometimes what looks and smells like failure is just that. Oh man, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. He's saying it doesn't glitter because the graphics suck. So how does this... He's really trying super hard to sound smart. Or she. Kaja X. Okay. Bentley Boy 89. Graphics are terrible. Combat is clunky. Lots of repetitive mission. Avoid this garbage at all costs. I don't think there's a reason for me to read through all of the rest of the zeros. This guy was excited for the game. and it fell drastically and short on expectations on multiple fronts. Oh my god, long review. Combat system lacked depth. AI of enemies suck. Graphically, game did not meet standards set by genre. Textures were low res. Technical performance is unacceptable. Narrative is equally lacking. Plot was riddled with cliches and lacked coherence. Key moments felt a 0. A 0, though. I get not liking the game because it's not your style of game. Oh my god, but a 0. Shovelware bland, boring, Sekiro ripoff. Stay away from this pile of garbage. Sekiro's not even an open world game. The only thing they share is the parry system, and even the parry system is drastically different. Game is a 0 for me at the moment. Bought to play with the co-op, but co-op is trash. You can only play specific missions in co-op. But that's your fault for buying it like that before knowing, right? Am I going crazy here? Am I wrong about that? Do not advertise it as a co-op game. Drops below 48 FPS. That is annoying, but it's not like it happens during combat. It's just when you walk into the city and stuff. For me at least. Refunded on Amazon, and hopefully they managed to make a good PC port with above 60 FPS, no stutter. Yeah, I think I'd replay this if it released on PC. The game is a steaming pile of garbage. Greedy developers charging $70 for a PS3. It's not a PS3 game. I'm not even gonna... This guy keeps going on about how it's not a PS4 or It's not. It looks like a PS3 game. It's not. There's nothing to do in the open world. It's boring and empty. That's simply factually untrue. It is not boring and empty. Well, boring is subjective. You might find it boring, but it's not empty. Excuse me, it's not empty. Yeah, the wasteland is full of plants, trees, and rocks, and they look beautiful. Why is there a camera that prints photos in color? It's a game. Alright, let's look at this last one. Terrible graphics, looks PS2. Oddly enough, people are comparing it with Ghost of Tsushima. Only similarity that it has an open world and there's samurais in it. I didn't like the gameplay. I'm not going to criticize the horse, but really wolves that do backflips. Please don't waste your money. The backflip thing is really funny, but it wasn't funny until he just mentioned it. So, I've been enjoying the game, clearly. Guys, I think if you're into a solid combat system, this is a game worth trying. I wouldn't listen to all these heavily negative reviews. I mean, these are way overblown and exaggerating the state of the game. Even the performance, like it can be bad, but I can count, on my two hands the amount of times the frame rates dropped below 45 frames per second. And I'm platinuming the game. I've put a lot of hours into it. But yeah, if you guys disagree with me, please let me know, because I do want to understand what I'm missing here. The graphics aren't the biggest thing in any game to me. Stardew Valley is probably my third or fourth favorite game of all time. I'll have to go through my list. And the graphics are just pixels, right? They're very retro style graphics. Granted, I'm a really big fan of that art style, but arguably, this is the art style Rise of the Ronin was going for. They were maybe going for a more drab color palette. I don't know. I get people loving Ghost of Tsushima more and kind of comparing them, but Ghost of Tsushima does not really look like real life to me, right? Ghost of Tsushima is... The color palette's very diverse. It's a very saturated game, and it's not very realistic. And Rise of the Ronin goes for a more maybe realistic look, and I think that's fine. It's a pretty game nonetheless. Let me know what you guys think. I'm genuinely very curious about everyone's opinions on this game, and I'll respond to everyone that does comment, because I do want to get a discussion going on this. That's the reason I made the video in the first place. I do want to get my thoughts out there, and I want to hear your thoughts as well. So if you like the video, leave a like, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.